One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a super hard question, unless you're close to this age, but I want to know if you remember what you were doing on your 37th birthday. And for me, that's like 100 years ago. So I couldn't even tell you what I was doing, two birthdays ago. So I found somebody that had kind of a unique experience happen on their birthday, and we are going to unpack that today. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Sarah Barnes Humphrey. How are you today?
I'm great, Dave. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here.
Absolutely. Number one Amazon bestseller. I love it. You're a great author. Just released your book. It went to number one on Amazon. So fill us in on the name of the book and what the premise of the book's about.
Have you seen the name of the book?
I have. I'm like, what the heck is, I'm not a coffee guy. So I'm like, if this has coffee things about French press, that's how much I know about whatever a French press is. I just went right to coffee. So fill me in. Everyone else knows what a French press is. I have no clue. So fill me in on what that is.
So, interestingly enough, the book has nothing to do with coffee, but
Okay,
I
good.
called it I Buried Her in a French Press. And actually, I think it's chapter 11. I'm probably wrong, but I think it's chapter 11. And I talk about how I buried my step-grandmother in a French press.
Wow.
And a lot of people think because this book is a memoir about finding my voice and the power of being heard, and so a lot of people think it's an antidote or like
Okay.
this analogy.
Sure.
And then they get to chapter 11 and they read this chapter about how I actually buried somebody in a French press, and
Wow.
they go, "Oh, oh." So the title is an ode to my step grandmother who was one of my best friends, and but the book really is about my relationship with self-worth and really just finding my voice again through all of the experiences that I had. So
Wow, that's awesome. And I tell you what, depending on where you are in the world, some people they never find their voice because they don't think they're good enough, and other people only know their voice because they think they're the best. So, you kind of have these two opposite ends. Hopefully, somewhere in the middle is where most of us can land today. So, I'm excited to unpack this topic. You are the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, which is a podcasting community, and you're in the top 1% of all podcasts in the world right now, which is congratulations. That's awesome. And then you're also
thank you.
founded of the Blended Pledge. So we got a lot to unpack. And I
Mhm.
really want to start at the kind of at the beginning because, like I mentioned before, Sarah, we have a lot of people listening that love hearing about the journey that our guests have from being in corporate America to owning your own business. Some of us, it happened overnight. Some of us, it happened over a long span of time. So fill us in if you can, as much as you feel you can legally share. Share with us what happened for you in that transition because I think it's a fascinating story.
I would love to, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So right out of high school, I went into the family business. So our family owned a logistics company, which is kind of like a travel agent for cargo. So if like if we move books, use books
Sure.
for example, they have to
Okay.
be shipped. And so a logistics company would help you with that. And so I went straight out of high school as reception of the logistics company and kind of worked my way up. I did operations for 8 years, sales for 8 years. Throughout that time, I did courses by correspondence. You might remember that. There's not
That's
a
an
lot of
oldie.
people that
Hey,
remember
don't say that. That
correspondence.
that's going to age you there. I don't
I
don't say
know.
correspondence. Say online. That's better.
I mean, we weren't even at the online point at that time.
Right?
Um,
Exactly.
so I did a lot of my diplomas in education by correspondence and then eventually online. And I also had a lot of side hustles during that time as well. I really wanted to learn as much as I could about myself, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I was
Sure.
good at, what I wasn't good at. And so I did all of those things. And then I was director of sales and marketing. And in 2016, I started this podcast because we needed a way to tell our brand story. And so I asked a gentleman, one of my colleagues, to be my co-host, and tongue in cheek, we called it Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. And it
Wow.
was really just to see how far we could push the industry. And we got 1,000 downloads overnight one night. So I was like, okay, we're kind of on to something. People.
Sure.
And then 10 days before my 37th birthday, the family closed the doors of the business, and
Wow.
I was out on my butt with nowhere to go, no team, no co-host, but I had companies paying $100 to come on the show.
Oh,
So I had to
nice.
keep it going.
Sure, for sure.
And so I had to learn graphic design, social media, website design, you name it. I sort of had to learn all of that. And nobody to this day would hire me for graphics. I mean, let's just put it out there because they were awful. But I put them out there anyways because it needed to be done and I had an obligation to fulfill. And so I kept that going and I could not find a job to save my life. It took me 8 months and I finally got a part-time job.
Wow.
And it was as a receptionist at an indoor tennis club. And I was mopping floors at night.
Did at least you like playing tennis?
I like playing tennis. I didn't get to play a lot because, to be honest with you, I was working there. I also had another part-time job. So I had two part-time jobs. I
Okay.
was trying to build this business into something that I didn't even know, like didn't really exist. Like, how do you make money at podcasts? So I
Right.
was
Sure.
literally just trying to figure out my way in the entrepreneurial world with this podcast and what I thought could be a business while I was working two part-time jobs. And I actually didn't pay myself for the first 3 years.
Sure. Wow. Well, I tell you what, there's a ton there. Think about what just transpired, right? I mean, part-time jobs paying for something that is a dream for somebody. I think, I don't know about you, I'm old school, so I'm used to this, but it seems like a lot of people now just want to get rich quick. They want to push a button, they want to come up with a saying, they want to go viral, they want something to happen like immediately so
Mhm.
that they don't have to put in all this work and effort. You seem to come from the opposite side where you had to put in all this work and effort because that's just how it was for you. I mean, have you found any easy buttons to push that would make you tons of money without working for them?
No, and don't think that I haven't tried. I mean, I have
Cool.
tried, the MLMs a variety of different times, a variety of different products. It was just not my jam.
Yeah,
And, I think it's kind of human nature. I think the fact that we have social media now and you see people go viral, it seems like it's much more tangible these days to have
sure,
that sort of mindset and
sure.
dream. Whereas I think when you and I grew up, we still wanted things to happen really quickly. We
Right.
just didn't have social media to
Yeah,
like go viral at or anything
right.
like
Barely had a fax machine back then. So it's
that.
like,
Typewriter.
right, exactly. When people are like a type what? What was that? It's like Google typewriter, you young folk. So, but no, and so you were actually in the podcast world before it was even really popular. So how did you kind of, I mean, how did you land on that versus a TV show, radio show type, the written word? How did you land on podcasts so early in the podcast world?
So at the time, I don't know how, but I got into podcasts and I was listening to Lewis Howe's School of Greatness podcast. It was pretty much the only one I was listening to at the time.
Okay,
And my team and I, because I was director of sales and marketing, we needed to do something to be able to tell our brand story at the time. And I was like, well, if Lewis Howes can have a podcast, why can't Sarah Barnes Humphrey? And why can't we use it to really
yeah,
drive our messaging and let people know who we are? And it's not
sure,
about us, it was sponsored by the company. It's
sure,
really about the stories within the industry that we can help tell, which will then obviously drive, brand awareness and
yeah,
hopefully some demand gen.
sure.
And so that's how that really transpired. It wasn't really much more than that.
Well, but supply chain, I mean, that's a big topic.
Yeah.
So, like when you hear supply chain, how do you define it on your podcast, for instance? How do you guys define the supply chain?
Yeah. So I would say, like, if you've got, I'm going to use this as an example. So this has got all sorts of different components. So the very top of it is sourcing and finding these components.
Okay.
And then it's buying the components, and then it's manufacturing it into a stapler. And then it's moving that stapler from the manufacturing facility to, let's say, a warehouse for
Mm,
inventory.
Okay.
And then once somebody purchases it online, or maybe a store purchases it in bulk, it then gets put into a shipment and then it's sent either to another warehouse or to somebody's front door.
Gotcha.
And
Wow.
then
So it's
there's
pretty
one
broad.
other aspect, which is the returns. So the reverse logistics. So if you don't
Gotcha.
like this stapler and you decide to return it, that's the last piece of supply chain.
Sure. Okay. Well, and then so early for you though, your logistics company and supply chain were kind of really tightly knit there. So for someone listening, if you're thinking about a podcast or you're thinking about trying something new, in this case, at least for Sarah, she found something that kind of overlapped and intertwined. Doesn't mean that it has to happen that way, but I think it just makes it a little bit easier because you've already kind of mastered this topic. So how many shows are you in now, Sarah?
That is a good question. I
Uh-oh.
just recorded 524.
Wow, good
But
job.
that doesn't include, so I have a live show on LinkedIn every Tuesday morning, and
Okay.
I've been doing that since 2021.
Wow.
And
That's
then
awesome.
the Blended podcast, which is my nonprofit, that
Yeah,
one is, I think we're at 70 or close to 70 as well. So there's been a
gotcha.
lot of content, you know?
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. So your 37th birthday, you were unemployed. You didn't have
Yes.
a job and you were looking around going, what the heck? It feels like, and I started to read your book and I started to see like some physical ailments and physical things that had happened with you. But it feels like your attitude is setbacks can lead to like really good, incredible opportunities. And I want to kind of unpack that here because I don't like setbacks. So I don't, I'm probably the only one, but I
No, I
just
don't think
guess
so.
a lot of people don't like that setback. They want things to go well for them. They want things to be smooth. And it feels like if you have setbacks in your world, you can get off, kilter pretty easy. Was it hard for you to stay focused in some of these, whether you had some health issues, you had, employment issues. Was it hard for you to stay focused?
It was. Like there was good days and bad days. I don't think you're alone. I mean, I don't like setbacks. I say that, we can learn from our setbacks, but like
Sure.
they're not fun. I don't think anybody thinks that they're fun. And in
Yeah.
the moment, it can feel very all-consuming and that you're never going to get out of it. But I think part of that is knowing that, this is today and there's tomorrow and things can look differently as long as we move through it, right? I think the
Yeah.
key is to keep moving. And that's what I did. I had good days, I had bad days. I had afternoons of crying on the couch. I had afternoons of anger, that I had to figure out and move through.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I also had was I had these side hustles. And then I also had the podcast.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed the podcast. And I think what it boils down to for me is that I had obligation, right? To me, it felt like these people were paying to come on the show. They believed in what I was doing, and I had an obligation to them to deliver. Whatever that
Sure.
looked like at that moment in time. And let me tell you, my first episodes weren't great. So whatever that looked like, I had an obligation to deliver, and I think that's what kept me going. And
Sure.
it also gave me um, sort of hope in the fact that I could maybe make money at this thing and I could turn it into a business, and I think that's
Yeah.
what kind of kept me going. And so I would say for me it was obligation. I don't know if that's the same for everybody.
Yeah. Were the side hustles related to podcasting or
No.
logistics or freight? Were they at all, or were they
So
completely different?
so I think I had three other side hustles.
Okay.
And I had been building them for a while. And I guess for me, I was sort of thinking, well, one of these is going to come out the clear winner at some point,
Okay.
right? So I'm just going to juggle them all and see what happens.
Sure.
Two of them were makeup. I had a sweat resistant makeup line, which I turned into an Amazon type marketplace.
Okay.
And then I had a technology company, which was in logistics. It was called ships.com. And it was a marketplace to bring shippers and logistics companies together.
Okay.
And I
So
won an
I,
award for that. And
oh, wow.
I didn't even have anything really built. It was sort of, I
Okay.
won the award on the concept of it, which was crazy. And then I ended up selling it.
Okay.
And one of the reasons for that was my partner at the time, the business partner, he had a heart attack and
Oh,
bypass surgery at the exact same time that I got a really bad investment offer
oh boy.
to be able to invest in the company. And at the same time, Let's Talk Supply Chain was really taking off. And
Yeah,
so that was an inflection point for me in the fact that I really needed to decide which one I wanted to move forward with. And somebody had actually told me a couple of days before, they were like, Ships drains you. Let's Talk Supply Chain gives you energy. Like that's
sure.
you, that's your thing.
Right.
And so, there's a few things that you've got to go through with all of that to try to figure out which one is actually your superpower and the one that you want to pursue.
So I have a question for you before we take our break here. Is we as people, we have blind spots, right? So we
Mhm.
think one thing when it's really another, or we don't see something that's there. You know, it's similar to the blind spots in your, driving, is you have certain spots you can't see. So we put mirrors there. For you, who helped you with your blind spots? I mean, were you doing this completely solo? Did you have a mentor? Did you have a focus group? Did you have outside resources, or were you just kind of drudging along yourself as you could? I'm just curious how you did this.
That is such a great question and something that I haven't necessarily reflected on. But
Uh-oh.
as you were talking about it, I was like, I did it myself for quite a while. I actually didn't bring a business coach in until about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it took me a year to say yes.
Yeah.
Just because of the cost and
Sure.
and
Yep.
I
Yeah.
had to take a risk on them being my coach and really whether they were going to be able to help me with the business
Sure.
and stuff because I had been relying on myself for quite a while. But no, I there was nobody really to emulate
Okay.
that I could really reach out to and be like, this is what I'm building.
Yeah.
Am I doing
What
it
do you
right,
think?
wrong, or
Yeah,
indifferent?
exactly. Right.
And I had a
Yeah.
ton of blind spots. And I'll say one of the things that really did help me was therapy. I've been in therapy since I was early 20s, and I think it's good for everybody.
Sure.
So that really helped. And I had to work through, I don't know about you, but like entrepreneurship brings up all sorts of hangups that you have,
Oh
blind
yeah.
spots,
Yep.
fears,
Yep.
worries. And I definitely had to work through all of those throughout my entrepreneurship journey, and I'm
Sure.
still doing that today.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool that you're be able to be vulnerable to share that. So thank you for sharing that. But I think it's also important for the listener to understand that, a lot of times we do have these blind spots where we can't see something. We don't know the next step, but yet, somebody outside of the situation can do that, whether it's a family member, whether it's a board of directors, whether it's a friend, mentor, coach, whatever. It's usually helpful to have another perspective. And again, to Sarah's point, when you're early in your career and you're early in your journey, a lot of times you can't afford to have that. I mean, I run into startups all the time that me to help them, but they have no money. And it's like, well, it's hard to straddle that. So you got to get creative on how that works. But just be cognizant as the listener today that you're gonna do better, I think, if you had somebody if you have somebody come alongside you. So I'll ask you this, Sarah, and then we'll take a
Can
break.
I say one
Yeah,
more thing before
absolutely.
you go into the
Yeah,
next
jump in.
question? Be
Yeah,
very careful who you take advice from, though.
sure. Yep.
Please be very careful because if they haven't been in your shoes or they're afraid of your success, they might
Yep.
give you bad advice.
Yep. No, it's a
Just
great point. I
sorry.
was curious. My question was going to be, once you did have a coach, did you notice improvement versus when you were doing it yourself, or Because sometimes I always ask I tell people, if paying me doesn't make you more money, then don't pay me. I mean,
Yeah.
this is kind of one of those scenarios. We're a return on an investment. So for every dollar you invest with me, hopefully you get 50 cents back or a dollar or whatever. Those are easy decisions to make. So for you, did you notice a ramping up and an improvement once you hired an outside coach?
I did. And it's
Okay.
been steady. It's not like it was an overnight, like,
Yeah.
I doubled my profit.
Right.
It's been a steady thing, but I'm also one that comes up with a lot of ideas and I speak things into existence. And if they're meant to be, things will start happening to be like, oh, you're on the right path and you should be doing these things.
Sure.
But it's been great, honestly, to have somebody, even just to bounce some of the things off of, or when
Yeah.
I get into trouble with somebody,
Yeah.
where a relationship goes sour or there starts to be some distension within the relationship.
Yeah.
It's easier to have somebody there that's not like fully ingrained.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Without having the vested interest is usually, it's a lot easier to say, "Are you nuts?"
Well, and
You
I've
know?
grown as a person because of
Yeah.
it as well,
Yeah.
because they've been able to show me where my flaws have been and where I need to step up my leadership game.
Yeah. For sure. Awesome. Well, cool. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask about the podcast, and because there'll be people thinking right or listening right now that are would like to be a guest of a podcast, never have done it. Maybe they want to start their own. So I just want to kind of unpack that when we get back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Sarah Barnes Humphrey, the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain and the founder of Blended Pledge, a number one Amazon best-selling author. She's got a ton of stuff going on. It's 500 episodes in on this podcast. So I kind of want to hone in on that because I speak all over the country and we talk about getting out of your comfort zone a lot. And one of the first things that I always tell people is like, hey, you're in your comfort zone right now. What's one thing that you've been thinking of that you'd like to do if you could step out of your comfort zone? And it's crazy how many people really do want to have a podcast, be on a podcast, learn more about them. So let's give them kind of the 30,000 foot level journey of for you. So you started this podcast with a coworker. How long was it, Sarah, before you were able to actually make money at that particular podcast?
Make money or make profit? Because those
Let's
are
start
two
with
very
make
different
money
things.
because money, everyone thinks that those are the same. Let's just start with making money. How long did it take before you could actually charge a guest for being on your show? Let's start there.
So I actually did it probably a lot quicker than most people.
Okay.
I didn't even have the downloads really to match it. I just asked.
Sure.
And I think that was a year in.
Okay.
And I started off as $100.
Okay. Yep.
And then I think it was like a year or 18 months later, a guest said to me, I would have paid $1,000 to be on this show. The next day, upped my rates by $1,000.
There you go. Congrats. And
Thank
it was
you.
and it worked.
Yeah, and ever since then, we have increased our prices. So we've increased what we actually do for the
Sure.
client because we
Sure.
create content in a variety of different ways, including podcasts.
Okay.
And we've increased the pricing. We have an announcement actually coming out soon that we've partnered with Google Gemini for our
Okay.
podcasts as well. So we're constantly like innovating and thinking
Sure.
about ways that we can make the content more usable, more interactive, and it just benefits like the audience and, the guests that come on the show.
Sure, that's fantastic. So there's the paid version of this where a guest pays you to be on the show.
Mhm.
Most people in the podcast world right now are not getting any type of finance. They might have
Mhm.
sponsors, like we have sponsors. We have an occasional guest that pays to be on, but the vast majority of our people, we just are trying to spread this message.
Right.
And, so we have a different mode. We have a coaching business by
Yeah.
day, so I don't need to be,
Yep.
my fighting crime at night. I don't need to charge for it. Like you guys do, which again, I commend you for that. That's fantastic. The average person that's listening, that let's just say they're in an industry that they want to start a podcast about their industry, whatever
Mhm.
that is. Where do people start in that scenario, sir? Where would you suggest, if somebody's brand spanking new to this thing, where do you suggest that they start investing some energy?
Yeah, and I get this question a lot from a lot of different people. I actually take some calls with people who are looking to start a podcast, and
Okay.
I am very honest and frank about what it's going to take. Now, first, you have to figure out your why. I mean, you just described, my revenue model, but then you
Yep.
also described your web revenue model, and they're completely different. So you do a
Correct.
podcast for a completely different reason than
Yep.
I do. We both want
Correct.
to make impact in different ways,
Correct.
but our whys are different and the revenue comes in differently. And
Right.
so I think you really need to figure out what it is that you want to do with this podcast. Is it to drive revenue and leads into another business that you have? Maybe it's coaching, right? A
Sure.
lot of people do that.
Yep.
Or are you looking to build a media empire and you want this podcast to do that for you?
Sure. Yep.
Because those are very different paths. And to start, I also think you need to figure out, you know, what your space looks like. If you're going to be in an industry and you're going to double down on that niche, what does that look like? How many
Yeah.
players are involved? What's already happening? How do you make that different? If you're
Gotcha.
going to pick a topic that is more mainstream and can hit a lot of people, how are you going to differentiate yourself and what does that look like?
Right.
The path to making money is, you know, as well as I do, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And the different revenue models that you can use come with different risks, pros and cons, and you may or may not like it. For
Yeah.
example, a sponsor, you have to sell a sponsor over and over and over again, unless you have them for 6 or 12 months
Right.
and you have a contract in place. But even at the end of the 6 or 12 months, you have to have pipeline
Yep.
to be able to replace it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of nuances to getting
Right.
started and trying to
Yep.
figure out who you are. You also need to figure out who you are and how you want to show up because it's not easy to be somebody else. And I
Right.
think the other thing is I give everybody a year. And I'm
Okay.
not trying to be a jerk, but I give everybody a year because it's usually around the 9 to 12 month mark where it takes a toll.
Right.
And there's other competing priorities that come into play, or the universe shows up and says, maybe this isn't for you and you should pivot and have a priority over here
Yeah.
instead.
Yep.
So,
Wow. If I can't remember the number, I'm going to say, but I think I want you to help me with it. The average number of episodes in a podcast, I think before people quit, I mean, they don't last for 20 or 30 episodes, more than 20 or 30 episodes. It feels like that's like the threshold where most people, I've been here, done that. Either I didn't make money, it didn't make me famous, I didn't get to be Joe Rogan, whatever it is, right? There's usually some kind of defeat that happens. Is that about where you're seeing somewhere in the 20 to 30 range between the time that people get excited and then they kind of just let it stop?
I don't know what the number is. I stay on the 12-month train.
Sure. Gotcha.
If
No,
you're
it makes
still
sense.
there in 12 months, and the other thing to think about too, right, is I think they say you have to fail 9 times in business, and I don't like the word fail, but like you have to
Yeah.
fail 9 times in business for the 10th one to work out.
Yeah.
So if you think about that in the context of podcasts, you almost need to start two
Right.
or three to
Yeah.
see which one's actually going to resonate and people are going to
Right.
want to hear about.
No, that makes sense. That's funny. I want people listening, if they have any interest or if they've ever considered podcasting as part of their network or their marketing, scheme. I just want people to realize that it's doable.
Yeah.
We're doing it, Sarah's doing it, you know, um, we're 300 and some episodes in, you're 500 and some, so you're, obviously way ahead of us. But I think it's interesting that like you just identified, we have two different reasons that we're doing it.
Hmm.
And be really clear with your why. The clearer you are, I learned early on that I don't care about the numbers piece. People on LinkedIn can call or they can tell me, hey, I can get you 10,000 downloads a month. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what that means. I mean, are you just asking all your friends and neighbors? Is this some kind of
Hmm.
electronic thing? Are people even really listening? It's like I don't
Yeah.
even care. I had to, as much as that I wanted to ask Dana every month, hey, how do we do on numbers? I got to a point where I'm like, I don't even know if this is accurate, legit, whatever. All I know is like you is listen notes said we're in the top 2%, you're in the top 1%. So that means something right there. And for me, I'm trying to build credibility for my speaking business. And that's one of the ways that it happens between a Amazon best-selling book like you have, we have the same, and a podcast in the top couple percent in the world. Those are some pretty compelling things. Those are important to me. They might not be important to the listener. You might just want to be known as the industry expert. I'm assuming this Let's Talk Supply Chain, Sarah, has really elevated your expertise in that market, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely elevated my profile. I do have a logistics background, and so it's assumed that I am a supply chain expert.
Yeah,
And, to a certain extent, I am. I talk to a lot of people. But realistically, the way that I see it is that I give a safe space and a platform for other people to share their voice, share
sure.
their expertise, and
Yeah,
I just ask really good questions and bring
yeah,
really good energy.
that's
And
awesome.
that's what I'm focused on.
Sure,
And if you don't mind, I'd like to give the example of my second podcast, which is
for
called
sure.
Blended. And
Absolutely.
because that's a very different reason as to why I do that.
Okay.
And so Blended, I started advocacy work in 2018 when I started the Woman in Supply Chain series. And then I wanted to do more than have a conversation about gender. Obviously, inclusion is about so much more than that. And so I decided I wanted to do a red table talk for supply chain, and that's where Blended came in. So it's a group of 5 different people from different walks of life talking about inclusion in the workplace.
Okay.
And they've never met each other, and most of them have never met me before. And we talk about
Okay.
some of the most difficult topics out there. But my
Jeez.
why for that is that I have a blended family. And
Okay.
I wanted to create a safe space for everyday people to talk about what has happened to them and their perspective on it so that we could just learn from each other.
Sure.
And so that one I don't make any money at.
Yeah.
It drives our nonprofit because our nonprofit is called Blended Pledge
Okay.
and it helps drive that. But that's not a moneymaker for me. That's more advocacy work for me.
Sure. Well, and it also fills your love tank though too, I gotta believe, to
Yeah.
be able to, get that together, get in that nonprofit sector to make a difference.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And it just further clarifies, excuse me, what you said before about making sure you know your why.
Yeah.
Because again, if you just say, I want to start a podcast, and someone says, well, why? And you don't have a very crystal clear articulation of what it is that you really want, I think you're going to struggle having success. And that's why I think a lot of those podcasts don't last very long because they didn't really come to grips with their why. And
Hmm.
they had some thought process that it was not going to work or that it was going to just take off and again be a Joe Rogan or a Sarah Barnes Humphrey because you guys
It's
are right next to
resilience.
each other on the chart. So, but I think that it's important. Do you help people if someone's listening now and they're struggling to find their why or understand that process of podcasting? Have you been known to help people through that journey?
No, I'm usually helping them at the beginning of that
Okay.
journey. Sometimes I will help them where they're at the crossroads of wanting to make money on their
Okay.
podcast.
Gotcha.
But to be honest with you, I mean, I'm in the B2B space,
Yeah.
and a lot of podcasts are in almost the B2C space, which is the business
Yeah.
to consumer, and
Right.
I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
So they can come to me all day long and ask me how they should make money on their podcast. And I honestly don't even know what to tell them.
Sure. Yeah, no, which is fine. I mean, everybody's got their strength, and that's where I just want to make sure for somebody listening, again, we have these ideas in the back of our mind, and we talk about this when we talk about getting out of your comfort zone, because there's, your comfort zone, and then people want to be either learning or growing. But in between those two is what's called the fear zone. And that's where most people get stuck because they don't think I hear this all the time, and I was going to ask you. I hear when I encourage people to be a guest on my show, the first thing I get out of people is, "I don't have anything special to tell you," you know, and they that's their way of saying, "I never climbed the tallest mountain in the world. I never lost a limb in a boating accident or any whatever." Right? They have all these visions of what that is. Are your guests pretty normal everyday people, or are they like, oh my gosh, rock stars, every one of them is better than the one before?
So I have the perfect example for this. Let's talk
Sure.
supply chain is a different beast. That's all executives and supply chain and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Blended though, I will tell you, when I first started and we were inviting people to come on, and we actually give them a list of topics and say, let us know which one resonates with you. And then we put
Okay.
them down for that particular episode. And the reason for that is because we want them to feel comfortable in, the episode and the topic that they're going to come on for.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's so interesting because when I first started, I had people ghost me, not show up, message me the day before and say like, "Oh no, I can't make it for whatever reason."
Yeah.
And you can imagine trying to get five people together on an
Yeah.
episode
Oh
is
God.
hard. For a
Yeah.
2 hour block is even harder.
Oh gosh, 2 hours
And
too.
initially, I was taking it personally. I was like, what is going on here? And none of these are experts. So we say experts are welcome, but we want everybody, everyday people who are willing to share authentically.
Sure.
And what
That's
I
pretty
came to
cool.
find out is that 24 to 48 hours before the episode, it was almost like when we sent them the email that said, your episode's coming up.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to do to prepare.
Yeah.
And we would send them a script and everything too.
Wow.
They started getting in their head and they were like, I am not this person. I have nothing to share. I don't know
Oh
what I'm
man.
doing, saying yes to this particular thing. And like I said, at first I took it personally. And then as it kept happening, I was like, this isn't about me. This is totally about them. And I started saying, whoever is meant to be on the episode is going to show up today
Sure. Nice.
as long as we had more than one person other than me,
Yeah, right?
because that
Exactly.
doesn't make for a good episode. I mean,
Yeah, right? For sure.
and
Wow.
ever since that I did that, it took the overwhelm off. It took the personal out of it. And it was just like, listen, man, who's ever meant to be here will show up today. And that is what this episode's supposed to be about.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. So have you had more success as of late filling the chairs with the
Yeah.
five?
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
think
cool.
more and more people they understand the power of the platform and
Yeah.
they understand that the impact of their voice.
Yeah.
I think more and
Wow.
more people are understanding that it's important for them to show up and show out
Yeah.
and sort of make a mark in the world no matter what that looks like.
So do you have any visions of next steps or next podcasts or next thoughts that you feel comfortable sharing with the world today?
When is this episode coming out? Do you know?
In shortly, probably in February.
Okay. So I don't know if by the time this comes out, but the end of February, we are launching a program with Google Gemini,
Okay.
and it's going to make all of our podcasts interactive. So it's going to be an AI overlay, and people are going to be able to press buttons. They're going to be able to ask the host, executive summary, all of that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about that.
Wow.
And
That sounds
then
interesting.
and then yeah, we're expanding into Europe and Asia, at least those two regions this year.
Okay.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. Well, so you have some intentionality on your
Hmm.
stuff. And I think that's another important piece as we start to land the plane today. This really important piece to think about that, it's one thing to start the podcast. It's another thing to understand why you started it. It's, I think, also a really powerful spot to be is where do you see it in a couple of years? What are some of your goals for that? Rather than just, hey, me and my buddy are going to get together and talk about rock music or whatever, and let's see where it goes. Those are
It's
great to
great.
do as well. I just don't think that, that's not a good business strategy if you're trying to make money at it, if you're trying to move into a market, if you're trying to expand. So, are you pretty intentional with your goals for this moving forward, or do you feel like they tend to shift on occasion?
Oh, they definitely shift. I mean,
Okay,
listen, at the end of the day, with what we're doing, we're consistently breaking glass ceilings, whether that's in podcasting or whether that's in supply chain media,
sure,
as
sure.
as
Okay.
the term would call it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we don't really know what we don't know until we try.
Gotcha. Well, right along with that, then is like, what would your tip of the day be today for somebody listening, Sarah? Maybe it's something we covered, maybe it's something that we haven't covered yet, but what would you feel like your tip of the day would be for somebody listening?
So I talk about this in the book. I actually have a shirt and I should have worn it. It says progress over perfection.
Okay.
Some of my best or most listened to episodes have the worst audio. And when I got started, I wasn't a graphic designer, but I put it out there anyways, and I just kept building. And so try not to get caught up in the perfection. It's really the progress and the steps you take in the journey from day to day that make the difference.
So if your shirt says perfection over progress, then you're going to probably never start your podcast because you'll never get it to be perfection, right? So I love that piece because I remember for myself, my first episode was with my buddy Wayne Breitbarth, who's a LinkedIn guy, who wrote an Amazon #1 best-selling book on it, teaches around the country on it. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna teach him something. And I had this crappy idea that lasted all of like 30 seconds into my first podcast. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not here to teach. I'm here to learn with the rest of the people that are, listening along as well. So that was a huge thing for me is I had to shift from it was about me to it was about the guest and about the listener. So I love that you just mentioned. So thanks for sharing that. If people want to connect with you, if something that we talked about today resonates with them, maybe they want to buy your book, maybe they want to learn more about the podcast that you have, maybe they want to be a guest, maybe they want to be, learn more about your journey. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
So I spend a ton of time on LinkedIn. So Sarah Barnes Dash Humphrey on LinkedIn or Sarah Barnes Humphrey on Instagram. I promise you, if you put I buried her in a French press into Amazon, it's the only thing that comes up. And
It better be.
we just launched the audiobook. So we've got all versions on there. And then my
Good.
website is sarahbarneshumphrey.com.
SarahBarnesHumphrey.com. So that is awesome. Thank you so much. You're one of the rare ones that remembers a 37th birthday. That was only 2 years ago for you.
I
So
know.
I totally get that you remembered that. But I'm glad that those setbacks led to some really good opportunities. It's sad when we see how many people just kind of camp in those bad spots and never get out of them. So I love that story that you got out of it physically, you got out of it financially, you got out of it emotionally. So thank you for being vulnerable today and sharing. And again, for people listening, rather than jump into your next podcast or your next activity, just sit with what you heard for a minute. There was some really good gems in there for you and for your business. And just, again, sit with it, connect with Sarah if you need to, ask her a question, grab a copy of the book. I buried her in a French press. I mean, I guarantee that will get some great stares in airports when you're reading that book. I know how that works. So, Sarah, thanks for hanging out with us, and I just can't wait to see where this goes from here.
Thank you so much for sharing your space with me today. I really appreciate it. And this was a ton of fun, Dave. So I loved it. Thank you for having me.